Hey guys, welcome to the Men of Iron podcast. It's Garrett here. It's hard to believe that we are kind of already approaching the fourth quarter of 2022. We're in it. We're not even approaching it. We're in it. And as the fourth quarter hits, right, it's kind of this interesting time where we can start to kind of look back on the year and evaluate how things have gone. And it's also kind of a time where you start to think about the upcoming year and really what God wants you to pursue and what he has for you. Many of us are in the thick of strategic planning for our organizations and for our businesses and everything else that we take on. And this podcast, I want to really kind of focus it in on our marriages. There's a saying that goes, right, like marriage may be the closest thing to heaven or hell that any of us will know on this earth. And I don't know about you, but my desire really is to have like a true relationship with my wife, one that is full of love, joy, peace, happiness, right? Like we have this desire, I think, in each of us to laugh together, right? To communicate honestly together. I don't really want to ever just exist in marriage, right? We want to be best friends with our wives. And best friends are really committed to one another, regardless of the circumstances. Best friends go out of their way for each other, right? They're willingly and consistently looking to serve this other person. And at the end of the day, best friends are really at peace with one another, regardless of what's happening in life. And it's not a surprise, right? But marriage is difficult. It's hard. And I'm not saying anything that most of us don't already know, but it does take a lot of work, which is why the lifelong commitment of marriage should not be taken lightly. But like anything else in life with things that are hard, the reward is so great. And so the return on investment, that ROI on the relationship with your wife, at least for me, I have found that it is directly correlated to the amount of investment you're putting into the relationship. So the greater the investment, the greater the return. The more labor you're putting into the marriage, the greater the profit. And King Solomon reiterates this promise in Proverbs 14, verse 23. He says this, "In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty." There's an author, Stephen K. Scott. He says this, "Apply that labor to your marriage and your profit will be measured by the amount of fulfillment you and your wife gain. Mere talk, on the other hand, Solomon warns, is cheap and easy and leads only to poverty." He actually goes on to say that diligent labor is demanding. It requires vision, creativity, commitment, and effective partnering. And check this out. He says this, essentially, Solomon is telling us that if you are profitable in your career or if your marriage isn't as fulfilling as you wish, Solomon is telling us that if you are not profitable in your career or if your marriage isn't as fulfilling as you wish, you are probably not working diligently enough. Now, I read these sentences several weeks ago, and I realized that the diligent labor I was putting forth in my marriage was really non-existent. For whatever reason, I had allowed the circumstances of life to kind of take over. I kind of lost focus. My priorities weren't in order. And my wife and I had really been irritable with each other. And at the end of the day, if I'm really honest on this podcast today, it was really because I was irritable with God. You see, there was very little joy. There was very little happiness oozing from our marriage. And it finally came to this crossroads where I said, right, you know what, I've got to take responsibility and make some changes. And I want to just share kind of a step-by-step model that really you can start smart with your wife. And when I say start smart, I'm talking about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. But after realizing that I needed to kind of put forth more diligent labor in my marriage, I sat down, I wrote out a plan, and really started to execute it. And I've noticed a huge change in my marriage since. And I want to encourage all of us to start your marriage out with a bang in 2023. And I think that has to start now in the fourth quarter of 2022. So here's the plan. Number one, I want all of us to consider scheduling a day to personally get away. Yes, you heard me, to personally get away. And use this time, use this day to establish maybe some personal goals that you have in mind for the upcoming year. Keep it simple. Use that 5F model, right? Faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances. And it's important that this day is for you. Don't invite anybody else into that. Turn your phone off, limit your distractions, get outside, be part of God's creation. Okay, so number one, schedule that day to personally get away. Number two, schedule a day to get away with your wife. But don't let her know about that until you've handled the details. Take care of lunch or dinner plans, maybe get a babysitter, plan an activity together. But you got to get this on the calendar and schedule that day away with your wife. Number three is text your wife or maybe communicate the details to her. And it can really be something simple like, hey, hon, I've planned this day away just for me and you. I want you to block the entire day. Make sure you let her know that you've taken care of arrangements, babysitting, whatever else, maybe the dinner plans. Be ready and tell her, be ready by this time. Be extra diligent in communicating the details. Okay, number one, schedule that day to get away. Number two, schedule that day to get away with your wife. Number three, make sure she knows the details. And then number four is start your day out light. Do something fun together, right? Maybe take her shopping, grab coffee, go for a bike ride, whatever it might be that you both enjoy doing. Start the day out light. And then number five, share the why and take responsibility. You see, when the moment is right during that day, share with her why you plan this day. And for me personally, I kind of had to be honest. I had to kind of say, hey, listen, I planned this day. I felt like we were going through the motions in our marriage. It's not what it could be. And listen, I take responsibility for this. And I want to use this day to get back on track and to share my goals, to share my dreams, to share my plans with you. The next, number 6, is to kind of recap the year with vulnerability. Maybe in your day away, come up with a summary of your year and share that with your wife. Tell her about your personal successes, your failures, your disappointments. Maybe even take it one step further by kind of sharing your feelings on the marriage. Let her know how you appreciate her, what you love about her, what you see in her, and maybe even go further by sharing where you have failed her and what your desires are. The next step that you can do on this day away with her is to share your personal 5F goals. Give her permission to hold you accountable. Encourage her to check in with you. I would make a recommendation here and to make sure that one of your family goals is focused very diligently on loving her more effectively. The next step in all of this is to encourage her. Ask her to maybe consider establishing a 5F plan for the year. Set a time like the following week to sit down together after the kids are in bed, maybe review those things that she comes up with. Maybe there are some things that you both can kind of incorporate into your own goals that benefit you both. I know one of the things, I've talked about this before on this podcast, but one of the times my wife and I did this, we realized that, I had some fitness goals and she had some fitness goals. And so we just kind of came together and said, hey, let's run a half marathon together. And that became something that we were able to focus on together. And then lastly, I want you to kind of schedule these monthly checkups. Schedule that consistent day, that time, and that location to check in with each other. And use that to review your goals and talk about your marriage and be diligent. So guys, I want to bring our attention back to what Solomon says in Proverbs 14:23. In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Let's quit talking as men and let's put the work. Let's put forth the work that is required for our marriages to thrive and be successful and honoring to our Creator, our God. We'll talk to you guys next time.